The snow was falling so thick that Gabriel Novak could barely see 10 feet ahead through the glass doors of his building's lobby. And that was when he spotted her, a silhouette crumpled against the brick wall outside with nothing but a single duffel bag clutched to her chest. He had been working late again, like most nights, reviewing acquisition proposals for his pharmaceutical empire, until the cleaning crew started giving him pointed looks. Gabriel was 32 years old and had built his fortune by recognizing opportunities others missed, by seeing value where others saw risk. But standing there at midnight, watching the woman outside shiver in the December cold, he was not thinking about business. He was thinking about his sister, about how she had looked 5 years ago when she left her abusive boyfriend with nothing but the clothes on her back. Gabriel pushed through the door, the Arctic wind hitting him like a physical blow. Up close, he could see the woman was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair plastered to her face by melting snow. Her lips had a bluish tint that made something tighten in his chest. "Hey," he said, crouching down beside her. "You cannot stay out here. You will freeze to death." She looked up at him with eyes that were in startling shade of green, even dulled by exhaustion and cold. "I am fine," she said, but her teeth were chattering so hard she could barely get the words out. "You are not fine. Come inside." He stood and held out his hand. She stared at it like it might be a trap. "I do not have anywhere to go after that. We will figure it out, but first you need to get warm." When she still hesitated, he softened his voice. "Please, my name is Gabriel. I am not going to hurt you." Something in his tone must have convinced her, because she reached up with a trembling hand and let him pull her to her feet. She swayed, and he caught her elbow to steady her. The duffel bag dropped to the snowy sidewalk. "I have got it," he said, scooping up the bag. It was surprisingly light. Whatever she had run from, she had not been able to take much with her. Inside the lobby, the warmth was almost painful. Gabriel watched her face flush as blood rushed back to her extremities. She wrapped her arms around herself, dripping melting snow onto the marble floor. "The security guard is on his rounds," Gabriel said. "Come on. My office has a private bathroom. You can warm up there." She followed him to the elevator, leaving wet footprints. In the enclosed space, Gabriel could see her more clearly. She had a heart-shaped face with high cheekbones and full lips. Even bedraggled and half-frozen, there was something striking about her. But it was the look in her eyes that got to him, that mixture of determination and barely concealed fear that he recognized from his own mirror during the early days, back when he was building his company from nothing, and every day felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. The elevator opened directly into his office suite on the 45th floor. She stepped out slowly, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city, the modern furniture, the abstract art on the walls. "The bathroom is through there," Gabriel said, pointing. "There are towels. Take your time." She nodded and disappeared through the door, still clutching her duffel bag. Gabriel heard the lock click and let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. He went to his desk and called his driver, telling him to go home for the night. Then he shrugged out of his suit jacket and went to the small kitchen area in the corner of his office. He had always kept it well stocked for late nights. Now he put on water for tea and found some packets of instant soup. 20 minutes later, she emerged. She had changed into dry clothes, jeans and an oversized sweater, and had towel-dried her hair. Without the snow and the darkness, she looked younger than he had initially thought, but there was a weariness around her eyes that aged her. "Sit," Gabriel said, gesturing to the leather couch. "I made soup. It is not much, but it is hot." She sat down carefully, perching on the edge like she might need to run at any moment. "Thank you, you did not have to do this. I know." He handed her a mug of soup and a spoon. "I am Gabriel Novak." "Tessa Gray," she said after a moment. Then she wrapped her hands around the mug and took a sip. He watched her close her eyes at the warmth. Gabriel sat down in the chair across from her with his own mug of tea. "What happened?" Tessa looked at him, clearly weighing how much to reveal. "Does it matter? Maybe not. But I would like to know." She was quiet for a long moment. "I had a roommate. We were sharing an apartment. Tonight she told me her boyfriend was moving in and I needed to leave. She gave me an hour to pack. That is illegal. She has to give you notice." "I know. But I do not have the money for a lawyer or for first and last month's rent on a new place. I work at a gallery and the pay is—" She trailed off with a shrug. "Family?" Gabriel asked. "My parents died when I was 19. Car accident. I have been on my own since then." She said it matter-of-factly, but Gabriel heard the pain underneath. "I am sorry." Tessa took another sip of soup. "This is really weird, right? You do not know me. Why are you helping me?" "I had a sister," Gabriel said. "She got into a bad relationship. When she finally left, she had nowhere to go. I was just starting out then, barely scraping by myself, but I made room for her, helped her get back on her feet." He paused. "She died 3 years ago, drunk driver. Oh God, I am so sorry. So when I saw you out there—" He did not finish the sentence. Did not need to. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the wind howling against the windows. Finally, Tessa said, "I should go. I can find a shelter or something." "In this storm? At this hour?" Gabriel shook his head. "Stay here tonight. This couch pulls out into a bed. In the morning we can figure out something better." "I cannot ask you to do that." "You are not asking. I am offering." Tessa looked at him, really looked at him, like she was trying to figure out what his angle was. Gabriel kept his expression open, honest. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, thank you, really." Gabriel stood. "I will get you some blankets. There is more soup if you want it, and there are snacks in the kitchen cabinets. Make yourself comfortable." He went to the closet where he kept emergency supplies for all-nighters and pulled out sheets, blankets, and a pillow. When he came back, Tessa was standing by the windows, looking out at the city lights blurred by snow. "It is beautiful from up here," she said softly. "It is." He set the bedding down on the couch. "I am going to head out, lock the door behind me. No one else has access to this floor, but just to be safe." She turned to face him. "Where are you going?" "I have a penthouse a few blocks from here." Understanding dawned on her face. "You own this building?" "I do." "What kind of company?" "Pharmaceuticals. We develop and manufacture medications." He pulled out a business card from his desk and handed it to her. "If you need anything, my cell number is on there." Tessa looked at the card, then back at him. "Gabriel Novak. Novak Pharmaceuticals." She let out a surprised laugh. "You are a billionaire." "I do all right." He grabbed his coat. "Get some rest, Tessa." "Gabriel," he turned back. "Thank you for seeing me. A lot of people would have just walked by. A lot of people would not have ended up outside in the first place if the world was fair. Good night." He left her there, surrounded by luxury that probably felt as foreign to her as her situation felt impossible to him. In the elevator, Gabriel leaned against the wall and wondered what the hell he was doing. He did not make a habit of rescuing strangers. He donated to charities, sure, wrote big checks to homeless shelters and women's organizations. But this was different. This was personal in a way he had not expected. The snow was still falling when he stepped outside. His driver had already left, so Gabriel walked the 4 blocks to his building, letting the cold clear his head. But even when he got home to his penthouse, even after he showered and climbed into bed, he could not stop thinking about those green eyes, that quiet determination. When Gabriel arrived at his office the next morning, he half expected Tessa to be gone. Instead, she was sitting on the now converted couch, dressed in fresh clothes and looking significantly better than she had 12 hours ago. She had folded the blankets neatly and was sipping what looked like coffee from his kitchen. "Morning," she said. "I hope you do not mind. I made coffee." "Not at all." Gabriel set down his briefcase and shrugged out of his coat. Snow was still falling outside, though lighter than last night. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected. This couch is more comfortable than my old bed." She stood up, setting down her mug. "Listen, I should get going. I need to start looking for a place." "Have you eaten?" "I found some granola bars." Gabriel shook his head. "Not enough, come on. There is a breakfast place downstairs. We can talk." "You do not have to keep helping me. I know, but I want to." When she still looked hesitant, he added, "Please. I hate eating alone and I have a meeting in an hour. You would be doing me a favor." That made her smile, a small quirk of her lips that lit up her whole face. "All right." The restaurant was on the ground floor of the building, tucked away behind the main lobby. It was the kind of place that catered to the professionals who worked in the tower, all sleek lines and efficient service. Gabriel knew the staff well from years of grabbing breakfast between meetings. "Mr. Novak," the hostess said warmly. "Your usual table, please, Maria." They settled into a corner booth with a view of the street. Tessa studied the menu with an intensity that suggested she was calculating prices in her head. "Order whatever you want," Gabriel said. "It is on me." "You keep paying for things, and you keep trying to leave. We are both stubborn." He caught her eye over the top of his menu. "Pancakes, omelette." Tessa bit her lip, then closed her menu. "The vegetable omelette sounds amazing, and coffee, lots of coffee." Gabriel ordered for both of them, getting his usual omelette and wheat toast. When the waitress left, he turned his attention back to Tessa. In the morning light he could see faint shadows under her eyes, but she looked stronger than last night. Resilient. "Tell me about the gallery where you work," he said. Tessa wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. "It is a small place in the arts district. Contemporary art, mostly local artists. I have been there for 3 years, working my way up from receptionist to assistant curator." "You like art?" "I love it. I studied art history in college before my parents died. Had to drop out, obviously, but I always thought I would go back, finish my degree." She looked down at her coffee. "Life gets in the way, you know." "I do." Gabriel leaned back in his seat. "I dropped out of college too. Business degree. Got tired of theories and decided to just start doing. And look how that turned out for you." There was no bitterness in her voice, just observation. "I was lucky. Right place, right time, right idea, and probably a lot of hard work." "That too." Their food arrived, and for a few minutes they ate in companionable silence. Then Gabriel said, "I have a proposition for you." Tessa looked up warily. "What kind of proposition?" "I have a vacant apartment in a building I own about 10 blocks from here. Nothing fancy, but it is clean and safe. You can stay there while you get back on your feet. No rent for the first 3 months. After that, we can work out something affordable." "Gabriel, I cannot accept that." "Why not?" "Because it is too much. You do not even know me." Gabriel set down his fork. "You are right. I do not know you. But I know what I saw last night. Someone who had every reason to give up but did not. Someone who could have gotten angry at me for being nosy but instead accepted help with grace. That tells me something about your character. You are basing this on one interaction. I built a billion-dollar company on gut instinct and reading people. My gut says you are someone worth helping." He paused. "Look, if it makes you feel better, you can do something for me in return." "Like what?" "I have been thinking about starting a corporate art collection. Something for the offices, the lobbies in my buildings. I have no idea where to start and I do not have time to figure it out. You could curate it. I will pay you a consulting fee." Tessa stared at him. "You are making up a job for me." "I am not. I have been meaning to do this for years. The walls are all boring as hell. This is a legitimate opportunity." He met her eyes. "Let me help you, Tessa, and let yourself help me in return. That makes it a business arrangement, not charity." She was quiet for a long moment, and Gabriel could see the internal struggle playing out across her face. Pride warring with practicality. Fear fighting hope. "Finally," she said, "3 months to get on my feet, and I take the consulting job seriously. If I am going to curate a collection for you, I am going to do it right. I would expect nothing less." Tessa held out her hand across the table. "Deal." Gabriel shook it, and the warmth of her palm against his sent an unexpected jolt through him. He released her hand quickly and took a sip of his coffee to cover his reaction. This was a business arrangement, he reminded himself. He was helping someone who needed it. The fact that she was beautiful and brave and interesting was irrelevant. After breakfast, Gabriel took Tessa to see the apartment. It was in a renovated building in a decent neighborhood, a one-bedroom with hardwood floors and large windows. Nothing extravagant by his standards, but Tessa walked through it like it was a palace. "This is too nice," she said, running her hand along the kitchen counter. "It has been sitting empty for 6 months. You would actually be doing me a favor by occupying it." That was not entirely true, but it was not entirely false either. Gabriel did prefer having his properties occupied. Tessa turned to face him. "Why are you really doing this?" Gabriel considered the question. "Because I can. Because someone should. Because if more people helped when they were able to, maybe fewer people would end up sleeping on sidewalks in the snow." He paused. "And because you remind me that there is more to life than board meetings and profit margins. I have been going through the motions for a while now. Last night reminded me what it feels like to do something that actually matters." Something softened in Tessa's expression. "Okay, then thank you. Again, I will pay you back somehow." "You will, with the art collection." He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. "I am going to have my assistant send over a contract for the consulting work. Standard rates, legitimate job. You start whenever you are ready." "I need to give notice at the gallery." 2 weeks, probably." "Good. That gives you time to settle in here and start researching. I will have building management bring you keys and parking information." He headed for the door, then paused. "Tessa, welcome home." Her smile was like the sun coming out. "Thank you, Gabriel." Over the next 2 weeks, Gabriel told himself he was just checking in on a business arrangement when he texted Tessa to ask how she was settling in. He told himself he was simply being a good landlord when he had a new mattress delivered to her apartment after she mentioned in passing that the old one was lumpy. He definitely told himself he was not finding excuses to see her when he invited her to lunch to discuss the art collection. But the truth was harder to ignore when he found himself looking forward to her texts, to her observations about art and life and the city. When he caught himself thinking about her green eyes during board meetings. When he realized that for the first time in 3 years, since his sister died, he actually felt something other than the dull ache of grief and the mechanical satisfaction of business success. Tessa met him at a small Italian restaurant near her gallery on a Tuesday afternoon. She slid into the booth across from him with a portfolio bag and an excited energy that made her eyes sparkle. "I have been doing research," she said, pulling out a tablet. "I have some ideas I want to run by you." For the next hour, Tessa walked him through her vision for his corporate art collection. She talked about supporting emerging local artists, about creating a cohesive aesthetic that reflected innovation and forward thinking, about art as an investment not just financially but culturally. Gabriel found himself captivated not just by her ideas, which were excellent, but by her passion. She came alive when she talked about art, her whole face lighting up, her hands moving expressively. "You really love this," he said when she paused to take a breath. Tessa looked almost embarrassed. Sorry, I get carried away. Do not apologize, it is refreshing. Gabriel leaned forward. Most people I deal with are just going through the motions, doing their jobs competently but without any real fire. You have fire. My roommate, the one who kicked me out, she always said I cared too much about things that do not matter. Art matters, beauty matters, creating something meaningful matters. Gabriel held her gaze. She was wrong. Tessa smiled, and Gabriel felt that jolt again, stronger this time. Dangerous territory, he thought. This was supposed to be a business relationship. She was vulnerable, newly homeless, dependent on his help. The last thing he should do was develop feelings for her, but telling himself that and actually stopping it were two different things. So what do you think? Tessa asked. About the proposal, Gabriel realized he had been staring and forced himself to focus on the tablet she had turned toward him. I think it is brilliant. You have a budget of $500,000 to start, more if you need it. Her eyes went wide. That is a lot of money. It is an investment. If you are right about these artists, the collection will appreciate significantly. He paused. I trust your judgment. You barely know me. I am getting to know you. So far, everything I learn makes me trust you more. That came out more intense than he meant it, and he cleared his throat. When can you start? I gave my notice at the gallery yesterday. My last day is Friday. Perfect. Take the weekend to celebrate and we can start Monday morning. Tessa bit her lip. Gabriel, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you always this nice to people? The question caught him off guard. What do you mean? You have been incredibly generous to me. The apartment, the job, the lunches. Is this how you are with everyone? Gabriel considered how to answer that. No, he said finally. I am professional with my employees. I am strategic with my business partners. I am distant with most people because that is easier than letting them in. He met her eyes. But with you, I do not want to be distant. Tessa held his gaze for a long moment, and Gabriel saw the exact moment she understood what he was not quite saying. Her breath caught slightly. Oh. If that makes you uncomfortable, tell me. I will back off. You do not owe me anything, Tessa. The apartment is yours regardless, and the job offer is legitimate, but I would be lying if I said I did not enjoy spending time with you. It does not make me uncomfortable, she said softly. It scares me a little. Why? Because you are Gabriel Novak, billionaire. You own buildings and companies. You could have anyone. But I do not want anyone. I want to have lunch with you. I want to hear you talk about art. I want to know what makes you laugh. He reached across the table and gently touched her hand. If you do not feel the same way, tell me. But do not assume I am out of your league, because from where I am sitting, it is the other way around. Tessa looked down at his hand on hers. Then she turned her palm up and laced her fingers through his. I do not know what I am doing, she admitted. I just got my life turned upside down. I am living in an apartment you own, about to start a job you created. The power dynamic is all wrong. You are right. So we take it slow. We get to know each other. You establish yourself in the new job and we see where things go. Gabriel squeezed her hand gently. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people spending time together. Tessa smiled. That sounds nice. Good. Gabriel reluctantly released her hand as the waiter appeared with their check. So Friday is your last day at the gallery? Yes. Then let me take you to dinner Saturday night to celebrate new beginnings. Like a date. Exactly like a date. Tessa's smile widened. Okay, it is a date. Gabriel picked Tessa up at 7 on Saturday evening. He had agonized over where to take her, finally settling on a small French restaurant that was elegant without being ostentatious. When she opened the door to her apartment, he momentarily forgot how to speak. She was wearing a simple black dress that somehow managed to be both modest and stunning, her dark hair falling in waves around her shoulders. You look beautiful. he said when he found his voice. "Thank you." She grabbed a coat and a small purse. "You look pretty good yourself." Gabriel was wearing a suit, but he had skipped the tie and left the top button of his shirt undone, formal enough to show he was taking this seriously, casual enough that he was not trying too hard. At least, that was what he had told himself while standing in front of his closet for 20 minutes. The restaurant was perfect. Intimate without being claustrophobic, with soft lighting and excellent wine. They ordered, and then settled into the kind of conversation that flows easily between two people genuinely interested in each other. Tessa told him about growing up in a small town upstate, about parents who had encouraged her artistic interests, even though they did not fully understand them. About the scholarship that had gotten her into college and the crushing weight of student loans that remained even though she never finished her degree. About the grief of losing them suddenly, the disorientation of being 23 and utterly alone. Gabriel shared his own story. Growing up middle class in New Jersey, the son of a nurse and a mechanic, getting into business school on loans and determination. Dropping out when he realized he could learn more by doing than by studying. The lean years, eating ramen and sleeping in his office. The breakthrough, the first successful drug his company developed. The rapid expansion. The money that came faster than he knew what to do with. "You like it?" Tessa asked. Being that successful, Gabriel considered the question. "I like knowing I have security. That I will never be hungry or cold or desperate. I like being able to help people make a difference. But the actual wealth," he shrugged. "After a certain point, it is just numbers in an account. It does not make me happier. Honestly, sometimes I think I was happier when I was struggling and had something to fight for." So find something new to fight for. Like what? I do not know. Medical research that matters, causes you believe in, people who need help, she smiled. Art collections that will inspire employees and visitors. You think that is enough? I think meaning is what you make of it. Money is a tool. What matters is what you build with it. Gabriel found himself thinking about her words long after dinner ended, as they walked through the snowy streets. Tessa had looped her arm through his, and even through their coats he could feel the warmth of her presence. "Can I tell you something?" she said as they walked. "Anything. That night you found me, I was not just cold and homeless. I was at the end of my rope. I had been thinking about just giving up. Not suicide or anything dramatic, but just stopping trying so hard. Maybe moving back to my hometown, getting a job at a diner, admitting defeat." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "You saved me, Gabriel, not just from freezing but from giving up on myself." Gabriel felt something crack open in his chest. "Tessa," he said softly, reaching up to cup her face. "You saved yourself, you survived, you kept going. I just opened a door." "You did more than that." She leaned into his touch. "You saw me when I was invisible." He kissed her then, gentle and careful, a question more than a statement. She answered by rising on her toes and pressing closer, her hands coming up to grip his coat. The kiss deepened, and Gabriel forgot about the cold, about the people walking past them, about everything except the taste of her lips and the feeling of rightness that settled into his bones. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tessa laughed. "That was." "Yeah," Gabriel agreed. "It was." They walked back to her apartment in a comfortable silence, hands clasped between them. At her door, Gabriel kissed her again, softer this time, a promise. "I will see you Monday morning." "Monday," she agreed. "Good night, Gabriel." "Good night." He waited until she was inside before heading home, and the entire walk his face hurt from smiling. Monday morning, Tessa showed up at Gabriel's office building at 9 sharp, professional and composed in slacks and a blazer. Gabriel introduced her to his assistant, Marcus, an efficient man in his 50s who had been with Gabriel since the early days. "Marcus will help you with anything you need," Gabriel said. "Budget approvals, scheduling, vendor contacts. He knows everything about how this company runs." "Everything and then some," Marcus said with a warm smile. "Welcome aboard, Tessa. I have to say, I am excited about this project. These walls could use some life." Gabriel set Tessa up in an empty office down the hall from his own. It was smaller than his, but still had a nice view and plenty of space for her to work. Over the next few weeks, she threw herself into the project with the same passion she had shown at lunch. She visited galleries and artist studios, built relationships with local art consultants, researched investment potential and aesthetic cohesion. Gabriel made excuses to check on her progress, dropping by her office with coffee or questions about timeline. Really, he just wanted to see her, to watch her work, to hear her thoughts. They fell into a pattern of having lunch together several times a week, sometimes discussing business but more often just talking about everything and nothing. They went on dates in the evenings. Gabriel took her to shows and concerts, to restaurants she would never have tried on her own. Tessa took him to hole-in-the-wall art galleries and poetry readings, to places he would never have discovered without her. She was opening up his world, showing him corners of the city he had never explored despite living there for years. 6 weeks after their first date, Gabriel invited Tessa to his penthouse for dinner. He cooked, or at least attempted to, making pasta from scratch and mostly succeeding. They ate at his dining table with its view of the city spread out below them like a carpet of lights. "This is amazing," Tessa said, gesturing to the view. "Do you ever get used to it?" "Honestly, I stopped noticing years ago, but seeing it through your eyes makes it new again." Gabriel reached across the table and took her hand. "You do that for a lot of things, make them new." Tessa threaded her fingers through his. "You make me feel safe. Do you know how long it has been since I felt safe? Tell me." "Since my parents died." 7 years of looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next disaster, but with you I can breathe." Gabriel stood and pulled her to her feet, drawing her close. "You are safe," he murmured against her hair. "I promise you are safe." She tilted her head back to look at him. "Gabriel, I am falling in love with you." His heart stuttered. "Good, because I am already there." He kissed her deeply, pouring everything he felt into it. When they broke apart, breathless, Tessa took his hand and led him toward the bedroom. What happened next was tender and intense, a claiming and a surrender all at once. Afterward, they lay tangled together and Gabriel traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "Stay tonight," he said. "Stay every night." Tessa propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "Are you asking me to move in?" "I am. Too soon, probably," she smiled. "But I do not care. Yes. Yes. Yes, I will move in with you." Gabriel pulled her down for another kiss, happiness flooding through him. He had been alone for so long, had convinced himself he preferred it that way. But Tessa had shown him what he was missing. Connection. Warmth. Love. The art collection was unveiled 3 months later at a gala event in the main lobby of Gabriel's headquarters building. Tessa had transformed the space, bringing in works from a dozen emerging artists, each piece carefully chosen to create a cohesive narrative about innovation and hope, and the future. The event drew art collectors, business leaders, and press, all eager to see what Novak Pharmaceuticals had invested in. Gabriel stood to the side, watching Tessa work the room with confidence and grace. She had come so far from that frozen, desperate woman outside his building. She was flourishing, and knowing he had played even a small part in that made him prouder than any business success ever had. "She is remarkable," Marcus said, appearing at Gabriel's elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. "She is," Gabriel agreed, accepting one of the glasses. You are good together. I have never seen you this happy. I am happy. Gabriel took a sip of champagne. I want to marry her. Marcus did not look surprised. Have you told her that? Not yet. It has only been 6 months. When you know, you know. Marcus clinked his glass against Gabriel's. Go for it, boss. Gabriel found Tessa an hour later, after the crowd had thinned and the caterers were starting to clean up. She was standing in front of a large abstract painting, her favorite piece in the collection, created by a young woman who had been homeless herself before finding her way to art. You did it, Gabriel said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Tessa leaned back against him. We did it. This is your collection, our collection. I just wrote the checks. You made it meaningful. He pressed a kiss to her temple. I am so proud of you. Thank you for believing in me. She turned in his arms to face him. For everything. Gabriel took a breath. Now or never. Tessa, I have something to ask you. Okay. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Tessa's eyes went wide as he dropped to one knee right there in the lobby of his building, surrounded by the art she had chosen. 6 months ago, I found you outside in the snow with one bag and no hope. You changed my life, Tessa. You made me remember what it feels like to be human, to care about something beyond the next deal or the next dollar. You made me remember what it is like to love. He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring. I know it has not been long, but I know what I want. I want you, forever. Will you marry me? Tears were streaming down Tessa's face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, of course, yes. Gabriel slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. She kissed him hard, laughing and crying at the same time. Around them, the remaining staff and caterers broke into applause. I love you, Tessa said against his lips. I love you too, so much. They were married 3 months later in a small ceremony at an art museum, surrounded by close friends and the handful of family Gabriel had. Tessa wore a simple ivory dress and carried a bouquet of white roses. Gabriel could barely speak through his vows, too overwhelmed by the reality of having her, of building a life together. For their honeymoon, they went to Italy, spending 2 weeks exploring museums and galleries in Rome and Florence. They talked about the future, about the family they wanted to build, about the life they would create together. Gabriel had never been more certain of anything. When they returned, Tessa continued to build her reputation as an art curator. She took on other clients beyond Gabriel's company, developed a name for herself in the art world. Gabriel watched her confidence grow, watched her blossom into the person she had always been meant to be. 2 years after their wedding, Tessa told him she was pregnant. Gabriel cried actual tears of joy, holding her close and imagining the family they would become. Their daughter, Grace, was born 9 months later, perfect and tiny and loud. She had Tessa's green eyes and Gabriel's dark hair, and he fell in love all over again the moment he held her. Being a father changed Gabriel in ways he had not expected. It made him more conscious of the legacy he was building, of the world he was creating for his daughter to inherit. He became more involved in philanthropic work, using his wealth to fund causes that mattered, homelessness initiatives, arts education programs, medical research for diseases that affected children. Tessa went back to work part-time after Grace was born, consulting on projects that interested her. They hired a nanny, a warm woman named Ruth who loved Grace like her own. Gabriel made a point of being home for dinner most nights, of prioritizing family over work. He had spent too many years letting business consume him. He was not going to make that mistake now that he had something real to lose. When Grace was 3, they had a son, Miles, who was all energy and curiosity from the moment he entered the world. Their family felt complete then. The four of them in the penthouse that Tessa had gradually made into a real home, with toys scattered across the floor and children's artwork on the walls. Gabriel would sometimes think back to that snowy night, to the moment he almost walked past Tessa, almost dismissed her as someone else's problem. His whole life had pivoted on that single decision to open the door. Everything good in his world now traced back to that choice. "What are you thinking about?" Tessa asked him one evening. They were sitting on the couch, the children finally asleep, her feet in his lap while he absently massaged them. "Just that I am grateful. For you. For this life we have built." Tessa smiled, the same smile that had captivated him from the beginning. "I am grateful too. You saved me, Gabriel. We saved each other," he corrected. "I was drowning in work and grief and emptiness. You gave me a reason to live again, not just survive. Do you ever regret it? The slower pace, the family focus, all the things you gave up." Gabriel thought about his old life, the endless work hours, the hollow achievement, the loneliness masked as independence. "I have never regretted anything less. This is what success looks like. Not money or buildings or quarterly reports. This." He gestured to encompass their home, their sleeping children, the two of them together. "This is everything." Tessa leaned over and kissed him, soft and sweet. I love you too, always." Outside, snow was beginning to fall again, soft flakes drifting past the windows. But inside they were warm, they were safe, they were home. Gabriel pulled Tessa closer, and she settled against his side with a contented sigh. He could hear the wind picking up, the same wind that had been blowing the night he found her. Some nights, when he could not sleep, Gabriel would go to the window and look out at the city below, at the building where his company was headquartered, at the spot where Tessa had been sitting that December night. He would think about all the other people out there right now, struggling and scared and alone. He had increased his charitable giving every year, trying to make sure fewer people ended up in that desperate situation. It would never be enough, but it was something. "Come back to bed," Tessa murmured from behind him one of those nights. Gabriel turned to find her standing in the doorway, wrapped in a robe, her hair mussed from sleep. "Sorry, did I wake you?" "No, the bed got cold without you." She came to stand beside him at the window. "Thinking about that night, always. Me too. I think about what would have happened if you had not stopped, if you had just walked by like everyone else did. But I did not." "No, you did not. You saw me, and that made all the difference." She took his hand. "Come on, tomorrow is Saturday. The kids will be up at the crack of dawn." Gabriel let her lead him back to bed, to warmth and comfort and love. As he drifted off to sleep with Tessa in his arms, he thought about how much life could change in an instant. How one choice, one act of compassion could ripple outward and transform everything. Years passed. Grace and Miles grew, started school, developed their own personalities and dreams. Grace showed Tessa's artistic sensibility, always drawing and painting. Miles had Gabriel's head for business, always negotiating and planning. They were good kids, kind and curious, raised with the understanding that privilege came with responsibility. Gabriel stepped back from the day-to-day operations of his company, bringing in a CEO to handle the details while he focused on strategy and philanthropy. He and Tessa traveled more, showing their children the world, exposing them to art and culture and different ways of living. They taught Grace and Miles to see people, really see them, the way Gabriel had seen Tessa that night. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Gabriel took Tessa back to the building where he had found her. They stood on the same spot, though it was summer now instead of winter, warm evening air instead of snow. "Do you remember what you were thinking?" Gabriel asked. "That night," Tessa was quiet for a moment. "I was thinking that I had tried so hard for so long and it had not mattered. That maybe the universe was telling me to give up, and then you opened the door. Best decision I ever made. Best gift I ever received." She turned to face him. "Thank you for seeing me, Gabriel, for all of it. Thank you for letting me in, for teaching me what really matters." He kissed her there on the sidewalk, the same way he had on their first date, and felt the same rush of rightness. They went home to their children, to the life they had built together. And every year after that, on the anniversary of the night they met, they would return to that spot and remember. Remember the cold and the snow and the desperation. Remember the choice that changed everything. Remember that love could bloom in the most unlikely places if you were brave enough to open the door. Gabriel Novak had built an empire, earned billions, changed industries. But his greatest achievement was the family he had created with Tessa Gray, the woman he found outside his building at midnight in the snow with one bag and a world of possibility. She had walked into his life with nothing and given him everything that mattered. And every single day, Gabriel was grateful that he had stopped that night, that he had seen her, that he had opened the door. Because on the other side of that door was not just shelter from the storm, but a future brighter than anything he could have built alone. A future built on love, on partnership, on the simple, profound act of seeing another person and choosing to help. That was the real story, not the money or the success or the art collections. But the moment when two people found each other in the darkness and chose to build something beautiful together. That was the legacy Gabriel wanted to leave. Not buildings with his name on them, but the example of what was possible when you led with compassion instead of indifference, with love instead of fear. Tessa had saved him just as much as he had saved her, maybe more. She had reminded him that wealth meant nothing without purpose, that success was hollow without connection, that the only thing that really lasted was the love you gave and received. Everything else was just noise. Their children grew into adults, building their own lives and their own families. Grace became an artist and teacher, working with underprivileged youth. Miles went into nonprofit management, running programs that helped homeless populations. Both of them carried forward the values their parents had instilled, the understanding that they had been given much, and therefore much was expected. Gabriel and Tessa grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They never forgot where they started, never took for granted the miracle of having found each other. And when people asked Gabriel for the secret to his success, to his happiness, he always gave the same answer. "I opened a door when I could have walked away. And the woman on the other side taught me how to live." That was the truth. Simple and profound. Everything good in his life traced back to that snowy December night, to the choice to see someone who needed help and to do something about it. Gabriel had been blessed in countless ways, but the greatest blessing was Tessa, was their family, was the love that had grown from that single act of compassion. In the end, that was what mattered. Not the buildings or the billions, but the connections forged, the love shared, the lives touched. Gabriel Novak had learned that lesson on a cold winter night from a woman with one bag and nowhere to go. And he spent the rest of his life honoring that lesson, opening doors for others the way he had opened the door for her. Because sometimes the greatest things in life come from the smallest acts of kindness. Sometimes opening a door changes everything. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, the stranger you help in the snow becomes the love of your life, your partner, your home. That was what happened to Gabriel Novak, and it was the best thing that ever happened to him.